Well, certainly thank you to all of you for coming today. Certainly exciting heading into the season. Glad to have you here and to learn more about our women's basketball program. We now are 3 days into official practice at this point in time. We have 7 returners from last year's team, 6 newcomers, and it's a great combination of young ladies who are competing and getting after it. I think we have a great deal of experience in terms of maybe not a lot of experience at West Virginia, but a great deal of experience overall. And certainly that is important. But at the same time, we don't have a lot of experience in what our system and what our style looks like. So that takes some time in building. I'd say the young ladies that we have are very eager to do very well. I think they're very competitive. I think they're really trying to learn how to go really hard, but also trying to do things the way we want things to be done. And that's certainly is a balance at all times. You want them to be able to play without really thinking, but they're not able to do that at this point in time because there's still a lot of learning that takes place. But we have, I guess it's now 27 more practices ahead of us before we play our first game action here again on November 10th. So I really am excited about our season. What are our goals and expectations? Our goals and expectations are to continue to improve daily, to really compete and to really get after it, and then see where that leaves us at the end of the season. We're a process-driven program. We always have been, and so that isn't going to change. And I really believe that from the time that we started back in June until from where we're allowed 4 hours a week and into the preseason to where we're after 3 days of practice, we've made great progress up until this point in time. So looking forward to it and certainly excited for what the future has to hold for us.
You got 13 players, and I know that you said 7 are inherited, but did you have to recruit them too? I mean, basically,
right.
You had to recruit all 13 players.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think certainly it's a new style, new system, and certainly aware of that, not only as a coach, but also as a parent who's had kids who've gone through that. And so any change is really hard. It's hard for everybody. And so trying to help our young ladies understand how special this can be and how special they are and what we can do. I think we have an opportunity to do something here to build upon what's happened with the progress and the success of teams in the past here and to continue to grow. And so I think you're right. It's really important that all 13 of our young ladies feel that value and that growth and their opportunity is ahead of them.
Those 7, did you have to spend a little extra time with them a little bit maybe because they were Mike's girls and now you had to make them your girls?
Oh, absolutely. And I certainly believe that started on day one. The press conference was on, April 5th, I believe. And April 5th, we did a workout. And then after that, we've spent time after our workouts enjoying some meals with those young ladies, spending some time together this summer, and really trying to develop that authentic relationship with them and trying to get that to know them as well. To see them get after it and work out and smile and love it, but also be challenged is a balance, but it's certainly one that they have really wrapped their arms around, and they've done a great job of embracing that.
Yeah. Coach, whenever you got to come in here talking about installing new ways of doing things, new system. What is the Coach P philosophy, the system? I mean, it's something we haven't really had a chance to talk about yet.
Right. Defensively, we'd like to guard in a man as much as possible, but we can change how we guard in a man based upon how we guard post players, where we pick up, how we guard ball screens, but we'd love to be able to guard as much as we can in a man. That doesn't mean we won't play some zone, but certainly that we want that to be our mainstay and holding teams down and limiting good opportunities and teaching. And that's our system is a little bit different than Coach Carey's in terms of how we go about guarding some things, and that takes adjustment for our young ladies. But the toughness and the resilience is something that is certainly really, really important in that. On the offensive end, we want to get stops, and then we want to push it. It's a lot easier to score if you can get opportunities because you've gotten stops and get out and go. Our transition offense is something that it's not predicated. It's not a numbered fast break system. It allows for great versatility. I'd say overall our offensive mentality is to be in attack mode, but also be in control. And so figuring out that balance is something that is challenging for players, not just new players in a new system, but new players each year, as freshmen come in, because you want to play really fast and you want to do exactly what the coach wants you to do. So you want to attack, you want to go, but you also want to be in control. So we want to push it If we want to attack, we want to take care of the basketball. That's probably been a trademark of the teams that we've had a chance to be around and coach, and be efficient. Be a team that scores it efficiently. Now, how do we do that? We do it typically in a motion offense where all of our players are built on the versatility of being able to do a little bit of everything. Handle the ball, shoot it from the arc, post up inside. And that's really fun for a lot of players because especially the smaller players want to post up and the bigger players all want to shoot three. So it kind of fits a lot of different styles and systems of what those players really want. But what that means then is that we have to continue to develop that overall versatility of all of our players. And then the understanding of who should cut when, who should post up, how long should you post up, how do you empty the lane. And so that all takes time and communication. It's hard to communicate when you really don't have many players who understand it yet. But again, they're working at it and they're really grasping, and I would say we're continuing to grow.
So when I was looking at it, I think like maybe half the roster, maybe a little bit more than half the roster is guards. Is that just the way it shaped out, or is that kind of what you like to see? Or
Well, I think it's the way it shaped up, but the reality is, in a versatile style of play, we can make that work. The bottom line is, can we get the ball around the rim and score it efficiently enough in different ways, and can we limit good opportunities at the rim? And can we box out? Are we tough enough to box out finish, even if we are a little bit smaller? So that's going to be a challenge that we have ahead of us.
Curious about the early offense. Where did that come from? I know there was we used to have a coach here in West Virginia years ago who always thought that was the easiest way to score because the defense is not organized.
Right.
Where did that come from?
Well, actually, a lot of it actually came from watching the Dayton men and the Dayton women, and it's a system from the Phoenix Suns. And so when I was coach, we actually started implementing it more when I was at Northern Kentucky. And we couldn't call it Phoenix because that's what the Dayton teams had called it. But in our league at that time, we had the Green Bay fighting Phoenix, and so we couldn't do that. So, we called it a little bit different name at that point in time. Now it's just our early offense, our attack mode. But teaching players how to do that, is something that just takes a little bit of time too. And each year we've kind of added a little piece to it based upon our personnel at the time and what really seems to fit us. And so we'll see what that looks like. We're not very far into it, and we haven't really done it as much against defense as we'd like to. But at the same time, I think our young ladies, everybody wants to play fast. Excuse me, everyone wants to play fast and have some fun doing that. And we have some speed, so why not?
I would say the premise 5-on-4 or 4-on-3 is easier to score than 5-on-5.
Well, it is, and right now what we've got to do a better job of, honestly, is we've got to do a better job of taking care of the ball in those situations. Because, again, we're playing really fast and we want to attack. But when you attack and you're whatever that advantage is, 3-on-2, and you throw it away or you don't get a good shot, then that's not really good offense either. And so that's what we're trying to figure out is how to do that. And so we track a lot of things in our practice. We stat a lot of things, maybe not necessarily field goal percentage the same way a game stat sheet looks, but we're always looking at how do we become more efficient, and so that our players can see it. If we're going to do this drill, and we're doing an advantage drill 3-on-2, and we're doing it for 3 minutes, then in those 3 minutes we really can only have one turnover at the most in 3 minutes. Why? Because 13 times 3 is 39 at that point in time. That's 13 turnovers in a game, and 13 is a little bit higher than we'd like to be at too. So trying to put it in terms that they can kind of relate to and understand. Yes, we want to play fast. Yes, we want to take advantage of situations, but the most important thing is that we're efficient in what we do.
How do you see your offense fitting in the Big 12? I mean, is it going to be something new to the league, or are there other people running it?
Right. I think it's different overall, but I also think there are some teams that play. There's some similarities to a few teams in the league that want to push and want to attack and want to space the floor and shoot threes. We want to do a little bit of that, plus also attack inside. So I think it's different than what other teams run. The interesting thing is that over the course of the 6 years that I was at South Dakota, we had a chance to play at least 5 of the Big 12 teams. And so we've seen a little bit of what the style of play looks like. Now, again, every year could be slightly different than that, but it's something that we think gives us an opportunity, even if we are a little bit smaller, to have opportunities to attack in different ways.
You run into some pretty big players in the Big 12 on occasion.
Yes, we do.
I mean,
Absolutely. They're really big.
How do you handle that? I mean, if you don't have man on man, and you want to play man to do that?
I think it's a great question. Certainly before, and we were kind of in that situation at the University of South Dakota. We had enough size to play and guard the way we wanted to guard within our conference. But once we got outside of our conference and started playing some teams at the Power 5 level, it became a little bit more of a challenge for us. And so then we had to look at how do we change our defense so that we can still, as to the best of our ability, stay locked in a man-to-man. But that may mean we can't front the post, because if we were fronting the post, we couldn't steal the lob on the backside. And so now we have to change how we guarded some of that action, and that will be interesting for us. That'll be a modification. I think the other part of it is the other side is, okay, well, then we'll play it in a zone because we don't have the size to match up. But then the challenge becomes, how do you rebound in that type of a zone? And there's so many teams in the Big 12 that shoot the ball so well. How do you find a way to make sure that you're limiting good opportunities from those players?
To what you were saying before, the one that comes to mind is Oklahoma. I mean, they flipped it by playing a perimeter style, the attacking style. I think they won 25 games last year playing it. Didn't you play them last year? So
We did.
You're familiar with them?
We did. We played in the first game of the year at our
Is there any
place.
similarities in what you want to do on what they did last year to flip that around and have the
I
success?
think there are a lot of similarities in the mentality, the way we go about doing it. It's probably a lot different, but I think in the mentality, absolutely.
I'm looking at the players that we're familiar with.
Right.
Quinterly and Madison seem to fit what you want to
Yes. And they're doing really, really well. JJ Quinterly, Madison Smith, two players that certainly have incredible speed, and their quickness can really do a lot of good things for you on both ends of the court. At the same time, they're really versatile type of kids. They can shoot it from the arc. They can get to the rim and score. They can pull up, and they can create for their teammates. Now, they are the ones that we got to get out of the lane, because especially Maddie. Maddie loves to post up, but she's really good at it too. She's very good at it. So, I think they are two players that really what we're trying to work on with those two is to slow them down in some ways so that they can read. In our motion offense, it's not as if we're just trying to drive into one area. It's not like, hey, we set up our offense so we can drive middle, or we set up our offense so we can drive baseline, or we set up our offense so we can drive down the rails. Our offense is set that you can get those type of drives within almost any offensive possession, but we don't even know when that's going to happen because it depends on what the actions of the other players are. And so slowing down and reading, this isn't my gap right now. Even though last possession I got a great middle drive. Well, now the middle's plugged up. Now your option is to drive to the baseline. So slowing down is something that's really hard for players who have great, great speed. When they do that, it really makes them even faster. And so that's something that they're working on. The other two players I think you're familiar with that I think really do fit us extremely well too are both Jayla Hemingway and Savannah Samuel. They're both players that have versatility and they have size. So when they post up, they can do a lot of things, but they can also shoot it, they can handle it, they can get to the rim. Understanding, again, when to do what. When should they back cut? When should they pop? When should they curl? When should they screen versus someone else screen for them? All things that take a little bit of time.
Savannah, your best on-ball defender?
I would say at this point in time, that is a little bit up for grabs. I think we've got.
I know she was last year.
She is a very good defender. She is. I don't know that I would say she's the best at this point in time because we've been putting in a lot of different drills and putting our kids in different situations. And almost every day, I would say there's one player that kind of stands out as, wow. That was really, really well done. Whether that's, JJ or Maddie getting some ball pressure, whether that's Savannah being able to lock down. Messiah Hunter is a young lady who I think has the ability to be a great defender. She redshirted last year. I think Jayla Hemingway can make a lot of plays defensively. I really do. Tavi Diggs is a young lady from TCU who transferred in, who has the ability to use some quickness defensively in the post. Kaya Watson's a young lady that transfers from South Dakota. She's a young lady that has had success defending and can really move and understands how we play, and that gives her an advantage. So I think we've got the ability. I think we have the tools. I think we have the personnel to be good defensively. We've got to figure out how to put that together yet.
How long does it usually take for the understanding you're looking for to kick in with new players? You have them every year, but not all at once usually.
Right. Yeah. There were a lot of freshmen this year. We have 13 freshmen this year. That's a hard question to answer because I would say some of it depends on their receptiveness to want to learn something new. I would say overall this group has been incredibly receptive, unbelievably receptive. We've changed a little bit of how we teach. And so typically as a coach at this time of the year, at the beginning of, before practice starts, we go and sit down in the film room and we watch 15, 20 minutes of film and then expect them an hour and a half later to remember what they watched in film an hour and a half or 2 hours earlier after they warmed up, those type of things. So we're not doing that. We're watching film within the scope of our practice so that they can see it, then go do it, which certainly helps with the learning curve. I think some of it depends on how quickly they can process and change. And I would say this, for players like Madison Smith, who've been in a different system for 4 years, and some of even our transfer kids who've been in systems for a long period of time, that can actually, it's interesting because it could be harder for them at times because they've been trained one way, so they have to be retrained, but they also know how to learn. And so I would say we've been really encouraged with how quickly our players are understanding the need to compete, because the bottom line is we're not, when the lights are on and they're wearing a real uniform for the first time, they're going to go back to playing the way that they have played in the past. That's the reality. We're going to try to modify that to the best of our ability, but at the same time, what we hope that we have done a really good job of prior to that time is teaching them how to compete on the floor, how to communicate, and how to fix problems when they arise, because in the game there are things that happen all the time. We don't want to allow this type of a drive, but that drive happened. So now what are you going to do, and how are you going to scramble when that happens? We don't want to give up. A lot of times when you give up one offensive rebound, you end up giving up about 4 or 5 offensive rebounds potentially in that possession. Have we done a good enough job training that toughness that it takes when you've given one up to not give up the second or the third one? Or how do we do a really good job of defending, and when we get beat, guarding and trying to rally and help each other, and do that without fouling and put them in at the free throw line. So those are all things that's hard to figure out how long it takes. And right now we've had some possessions that are very good at scrambling and making plays. And that's ultimately not when you're really good defensively, you don't put yourself in scramble situations all that often. But the reality is, until we get to that point, we're going to have to scramble and we're going to have to cover up. And then are we tough enough to make the plays that we need to make, even though it looks like we're beat? Oh, something happened and we came from behind and someone else stole it. And that's where we're working on that aspect of it right now.
You were talking about practice. You'll stop practice and watch film in the middle?
We do.
Okay, I mean, that's
Yep,
interesting. I've
yeah.
never really heard that before.
No, it's something new. We haven't really done it before either. And so it's scripted into the practice. We'll stop, get a drink. We'll call it a media timeout at that point in time. We'll watch the film before the next drill, and we'll go at that point in time. I always say I think it's hard for the coaches because it puts you in a stop-start scenario, and while you're thinking about the next drill, usually you can just flow into the next drill and you've already watched film. But now you got to actually make sure that's all set and put together. And I think the players actually enjoy it. I told them it's an experiment right now. And we're 3 days into the experiment. It seems to be going pretty well. So
How you play though? Stop to start?
it is. It really is. And now we have to make an adjustment. Yeah. Now, the reality is what we're also able to do in this way is control the game a little bit more, control the practice a little bit more, which that isn't always realistic in the game. You don't always have that ability to do that. But we also have to understand what it's supposed to look like before we can actually do it that way. One of the things that's challenging on me when watching film this way is that I like showing them like 15 clips of the same thing, but one little variance in it. And at that point in time, they've fallen asleep and they're bored at that point in time. Now I can only show them 4. By 4 clips, it's time to get back to practice at that point in time, or 6 clips. So I can only show them 4 of this and 2 of that, and then we got to move on to the next thing. And at that point in time, it's good for them. It's probably actually a lot better as a coach too in teaching them because we're not overdoing it, but I like to show them everything, So.
Are you allowed in a game, everybody's got iPads now and the likes to look at things when they come out of the game and, sit on the bench for a while?
Right, not currently. No, I do think that'll happen, yeah.
Are they allowed?
You have to show it to the
allowed? I know they are in the NFL. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not sure. I know we as coaches could watch it during the course of, halftime, those type of things. We're not allowed to show any live film to our players. So.
curious about something. You mentioned this before, and some of us older guys remember John Beeline.
Yeah, easy.
But I'm hearing
Easy now. Easy. Let's not take it personally. We all love each other in this room.
Some of the things that you're mentioning about reading, we used to hear that from Beeline. Is there any fingerprints of Beeline in what you're doing?
There are. So John Beeline was at Michigan for, I think, about 5 years that I was there, and had a chance to really watch him in practice, watch his style. I do think there are a lot of similarities in terms of how we break things down and how we teach and how we try to simplify things. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I think we took away from Coach Beeline is some of his terminology. We don't use the exact same terminology, but it was interesting watching him practice. He would tell his guys, and don't quote me on this exactly, but he'd say, okay, we're going to play hockey, and after hockey we're playing baseball, and then we're going to go throw it to the quarterback, and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? But his guys knew exactly what it meant. So baseball meant this, hockey meant this, and so it was very simplified for his players. And so we try to do that to the best of our ability so that they can understand. The bottom line is, if we have great spacing offensively, and then we get some movement that's hard to guard, and we have players that can score from different ways, we're not really doing anything complicated. We're trying to play basic, simple, fundamental basketball and make reads. And that can be really challenging to guard, really. So that's all we're trying to teach our players how to play.
Coach, when you were looking for transfer players and were active in the portal early on, how difficult of a process is that to be able to round out a roster in a very short amount of time?
Yeah, that was certainly a great challenge. I thought our coaches did an outstanding job of identifying young ladies who fit us and who would help us grow on the court, off the court. And I think that certainly is a challenge to fill that many spots that quickly. The advantage that we have is that our coaches we've all worked together. And so we could watch players and say, this is what we see is her strengths. This is what people say about her. This is a kid that is similar to this player that you coached 4 years ago. This is a player that's similar to a kid that we have in our program right now. And could... It didn't have to come back to me and say, does this kid fit? They could watch film, they could identify, and they could say, this kid is a fit. I think we need to go after this young lady. So that is certainly a great advantage that we had in our staff kind of working together before.
As you're coming in and putting in new ideas and everything, some of the older players like Maddie, how much do you put on her shoulders early, or is everyone essentially new and there wasn't a reason to do stuff like that?
Well, I think it's important that before we can expect players within our program to be leaders, even players that have been leaders before here at West Virginia or at other programs, is that they have to learn kind of what is the way that we go about doing things, and then they live that, and then they can go out and they can lead others in that area. And so I think our players are all in that growth phase. I think we have some young ladies who have the ability to influence others at a very high level that maybe haven't been termed leaders in the past, that I think are great leaders and have the ability to do that. But they also, right now, they have to focus on kind of what they have to do first and foremost.
Russell, you had to pick up her recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through that and then where she's at right now.
Yep. Amari Russell is a young lady who was a great competitor in high school, won a state championship, someone who actually have known her high school coach and AU coach for a long time from when I was coaching in, certainly at Northern Kentucky and at Michigan. And so that was when, getting the job, reaching out to them, reaching out to her and her family, getting to know her. I would say she's a great fit for who we are, because she's got size, athleticism. I think she can defend a number of different positions. She's done that in high school. I think she's a young lady she's really driven. She's really tweaking her shot and adjusting her shot and is really making great strides in that area. So I think she's someone, I think it's always harder for freshmen because it's such a big adjustment, not only just to a new style of play, but you're away from home. It's it's just different. And so that takes some time, but I think she's someone who's adjusting at a very high level.
Do you like interchangeable players? I mean, I see a lot of people on this roster in the 5'11", 6'1" range. Is that by design?
Yeah, ideally those players that can do a little bit of everything are players that we recruit and we really like in our system, because we don't play by number. It's not like we need a point guard and a back to the basket post player, absolutely. But in all reality, if we can have a point guard who can do a little bit of everything, it really helps us. If we have somebody, we don't necessarily have to have the ball in Maddie Smith's or JJ Quinterly's hands. We can have anybody bring the ball up the court. We can have our back to the basket post kid bring the ball up the floor. And so that's a different, right. And so it's a different way. But it takes the pressure off of that kid. They don't have to, the time they have to handle it is when the ball goes through the net or it's a dead ball situation, then we're working to get it into that player's hands. But the reality is anybody can handle it and bring it up and make things happen. But then there's a teaching that goes into that. If that kid has their hands on the ball, then somebody else has to fill that kid's spot in the lane for a few seconds. But don't stay there very long, because then it's time for someone else to take it. So learning how to play together is really, really important. But yes, versatility and toughness are probably two things that certainly we hope our kids are the type of kids that we can recruit.
Anything else for Coach?
Well, I'm sorry, I just had one.
Yep.
So your assistant coaches, I'd like to ask you to tell us a little bit more
Right.
about them, but specifically on game day, on the bench during the game, who has what role?
Right. So the way that we've worked together in the past is that we have Ariel Breaker, who played at Notre Dame and was a post player at Notre Dame. She's someone who really kind of focuses on that area with our players and is watching what they're doing on offense and defense and is talking to them. Aaron Horn is someone who is working primarily with the guards and is talking to them, but they're also seeing anything that they see that they notice, whether that's offensively, defensively. And then Jason Jeske is someone who has done a lot of the special situations and the game scouting and opponent scouting, and not that the other two don't, but is really watching kind of the overall picture of it. And so, yeah, we're able to I think work together pretty well because we have done it in the past, and we have worked together over the course of time, know each other really well, have good synergy, kind of have some good times, can have some good laughs with each other at the same time. And I think that's really important. I think players kind of feed off of that, and they know that.
I got one more. Your schedule. How much of a hand did you have in this one, or what will it look like moving forward?
Right. Certainly quite a bit of it was already in the works by the time that we had gotten here. I think some of it was more of just kind of finalizing a couple of games, picking up a few games, the tournaments, kind of waiting to see who our opponents were going to be in those, And so I in looking at and studying the schedule overall and what Coach Carey had done in the past, I think he had a game plan that was going to position them for postseason, and I think that's something we've got to take a look at as we go through this and kind of explore that and examine this and figure out what puts us in position from a net standpoint, what puts us in position to be prepared for the Big 12, what puts us in position from a net standpoint, how from a ranking standpoint. So
Team building, playing to that too, getting the games to get your team where you need to be for Big 12.
Absolutely. Team building is a huge part of who we are and what we do on the court, off the court, but also that preparation. Now, the advantage that we have in women's basketball is we can also have practice guys that, that is a separator, I think, in the women's game. Now, it's not separated for us because everybody has them in the women's game, but I also think we can go out and we can find some players that help us, make sure that we are seeing the type of speed, size, whatever it is in our conference.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thanks,
All right,
Coach.
thank you.
Everybody.